technique class today, and the two techniques that I'm going to be primarily focusing on are the masking technique and the reverse masking technique. The masking technique I have done before in some of my classes, which typically I hold here in my house, but due to COVID, I'm trying something new, and we're doing a YouTube premiere, which means that I have pre-recorded this a couple of days ahead of time, and I will be streaming it live on Saturday, or not live, but it will be premiered on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And I will be moderating comments. So I'll be watching it along with you, but I will be able to comment in that way. You can watch the crafting and I won't have to be trying to moderate comments and craft at the same time. So this is my first time to do this, so hopefully it goes without a glitch, but I'm learning a lot of new firsts these days. So bear with me if it doesn't go smoothly, or my camera is a little fuzzy sometimes and my volume may not be what it needs to be. And this is in a new, I'm back in my craft room actually, which for my club girls will know that that's been quite a feat. It's still under construction and I'm trying to change a room, so it's kind of a work in progress, but I am going to give it a try. So we're going to be making 3 cards today using the Peony Garden suite, which is a beautiful floral suite that is in the annual catalog on pages 82 to 84. And it was a set that I just fell in love with when I saw it. It was one of my favorites in the catalog, and it didn't disappoint. It makes really pretty cards, and I hope that you like them. So I'm going to pause this, set up my table, and I will be right back. Okay, so here are the 3 cards that we're going to make today. This one is using the reverse mask technique. This centerpiece that is an oval is the part that's the reverse mask, and I'll explain that as we actually work on that card. And then this thank you card here is using the actual traditional masking technique. And then this third one is more of a paper piecing, which is using the peony bundle stamp dies. Dies. It's a 4-part die, and so I've already cut them ahead of time, but there's like 4 different pieces, and they all interlock and fit together to create this one flower. And so I will show you how I did that, and it's just really pretty, and in person it's even prettier than it is on screen. I don't know if you can even see the sparkle, the Winkostella that's around the edges. Yeah, you kind of can, but in person it's just really gorgeous. But the flower just looks so realistic, and I've never really raised peonies, but it looks like it would be a real flower. So but this die set actually is an entire suite. It's called the Peony Garden suite, and it is comprised of the prize peony bundle, the stamp set, which has a lot of great sentiments: friendship, sympathy, love and thanks, thinking of you, and then all these gorgeous flowers with corresponding dies for all the flowers. And so all of these, you can cut out the pieces and parts that make the flowers and the leaves, or you can cut out this this big flower, which is all one flower. You can cut that whole thing out with this die here. And we're not actually going to use this die today, but that would make a gorgeous card as well. And so we are going to be using the Dainty Diamonds embossing folder, which I believe is also part of this suite. And the embellishments that go along with it, the elegant faceted gems, they're just gorgeous. And the square vellum doilies, that's on this card. This doily, the vellum doily behind here is just beautiful and fancy looking. And so those are mainly what we're going to use today. And I am going to be using one more stamp set, the Ornate Thanks. That's where this thank you sentiment comes from. And on these 2 sentiment shapes, those come from the Stitched So Sweetly dies. And that's another really good die set. They've got so many good die sets nowadays that do borders and cut out your sentiments so nicely. So anyway, those are the stamps and framelits that we're going to use today. We're going to start with this card because that's the one that I have out. And so let me just pull this other stuff out of the way real quick. And to try to make things go a little bit faster, I have pre-cut some of this stuff and actually pre-sponged a lot of the flower parts because I didn't think you guys, you know how sponging works. And most of you have been in classes with me before that probably know how, but and I've already put on two of the three leaves that have the little edging. So basically it's a two-part framelit and or die, and so you've got the base leaf, and I did that in Pear Pizzazz, and then you do the darker one. I did that in Mossy Meadow, and I will go through and put all of the different pieces and parts for the card that you need. The measurements will be on my blog and in a written up post. But it's basically for the US, it's your traditional half page of cardstock. So 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and then a piece of gray granite at 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and the Whisper White for the card inside is 5 1/4 by 4. The DSP, which comes, it's the coordinating peony, and I can't find it right here in front of me at the moment, but it's the DSP that goes, it's part of that suite, that it's the peony DSP, and I'll have the exact name of it. I know that's not the complete name, but it's one of the designs in there, and all of that is really pretty. There's 3 main colors that are part of that suite, and it's gray granite, basic gray, and petal pink. You will notice that I'm using Blushing Bride for the cardstock instead of petal pink, but I just kind of like the pinkier tone of Blushing Bride. Petal pink is more of a skin tone pink, and Blushing Bride to me is just a little bit pinker, and I kind of thought that was prettier on the flower, but they both would work, but it coordinates. And then this square of Mary Merlot, which I thought really coordinated and popped on the card, is a 3 by 4 inch piece that I have already pre-run through the diamond embossing folder that I just had a second ago. This Dainty Diamonds 3D embossing folder, and so I don't know if you can actually see it. Yeah, you can, but it's real subtle and very pretty, but lots of little diamond shapes on it. I'm sorry, my lighting. I'm in my craft room and I'm trying to redo things, and the lighting, this is take 3, I think, and the lighting is getting better. It's much better than it was yesterday, but I still have some shadows and I still need to work on it to try to make it better. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and get started, but I will show you how to assemble the flower. And basically, the way you do it is you'll notice that the bottom of each piece of the flower, after you cut them out, it has the exact same shape. And so basically, you're going to slide this first one into the base one, and you're going to match up these curves right here, and that's how you know that it's correct. Once you get it slid in there correctly, it should line up exactly. And if you flip it over, you can kind of see it on the back, and it's easier to see there, especially since I've sponged it. But basically what I'm going to do is put a couple of glue dots on this base piece here. In fact, I'll get those now and use my Take Your Pick tool. Get these things out of the way. And I will use a mini glue dot because they're the easiest to use, and they're very sticky, and they're one of the things to me that work the best. Snail sometimes gives me a problem. Now, I will say I like the new Stampin' Seal and the Seal Plus, but I had such a backlog of snail that I'm trying to force myself to use that up first, because if I switch over now, I will never finish them up, and I'm determined to finish them up before I switch over. So you will see me using snail, and that is a retired product, but I'm just trying to utilize my supplies. So, but I will tell you that I do like the new Stampin' Seal. It does seem to have a much better tacky factor, or I don't know what you call that for adhesive, but it sticks much better. So, okay, so we're going to slide this in and line it up. And I just realized I put a glue dot where it really didn't need to be, but oh well. So once you get that, when you flip it over, it looks like that. Then you take the next smallest one, which I believe is this one, and repeat the process, and it slides into this prior one. And the same thing with it. You can flip it over and you can find the this little curve right there, and if you line it up correctly, you really don't see it when you flip it over the other way. So this time I'm going to put the glue dot on the smaller piece rather than the larger piece. That would have been the smarter thing to do the first time, but oh well, happy accidents happen all the time, and you just make the best of them. So anyway, I'm going to put a couple of glue dots here, and hopefully my volume is, I tend to mumble to myself. It seems kind of weird still to me to be talking to myself in here by myself when I'm crafting. I'm used to having a lot of people around to talk to, so this seems still a little strange to me, but I'm sure I will get used to it as time goes on. And I have to remember that you guys are all here watching, so so there's that one, and now we've got one more to go. And so you'll see, once you've got it cut out and sponged, it comes together really quickly. Then here's this last one. We're going to slide it in, and I want to make sure I have it going the right direction, because I actually might have it backwards. But anyway, we're going to, I think I do have it backwards, but I've got a piece of glue somewhere in its way. And so you just, well, this will be a good lesson for what not to do. If you glue it too much, you should assemble it all before you put your layers down. I can't figure out which layer has the glue dot that I need to get out of the way, so it's like right there. It should be right there. Oh dear. It's here somewhere. Where is it? Okay. Yeah. It's like in that. Well, definitely there it is. Okay, so it goes through that second layer. So, lesson learned, start with the smaller one and work your way to the top. That's obviously how I did it before, and I wasn't really paying attention that I did it that way. So, and maybe I just goofed up this time. I'll have to play with that again and keep that in mind next time, but you might want to try going from the smallest to the largest, or maybe just don't put so many glue dots down. Maybe I put too many glue dots, but anyway, we got it. And so as you go, you glue those down, and I still feel like that's a little cockeyed, but anyway, at this point we're going to go with it. So what I did after I got them all together, and this, you'll see that the bottom is all 4 layers do line up correctly when you don't have glue dots in the way. And so you just I kind of bent the with the bone folder was actually what I kind of did. You just kind of bend the leaves up a little bit, just to kind of make them look a little more realistic. And it would have been better to do this before you put all the layers together. Yet again, another thing that I did differently the first time, but you can kind of, if you get them all together and realize, then you can just kind of bend them, and they look okay flat, but I just thought they get a little bit more dimensionalized if you bend them a little. And then the last thing we're going to do is slide these, and for these I'm actually just going to use a little bit of Tombow glue because I want to have a little wiggle room for these. So I'm going to glue this and slide it down. You're going to kind of pull this front flap up and just kind of slide it down in there. And I actually did two. I don't really know if it should have had two, but I just felt like one kind of got a little lost. And so I put a second one in there, and I liked the way that looked better. So, ooh, yeah, if you're not careful, you get too much glue. So that's what I've got a little chamois over here that my cousin Polly gave me, and it really comes in quite handy, especially for glue. Okay, and so just kind of squeeze that down and hold it for a second and let it dry, and hopefully keep the tacky off your fingers. So there's that, and then once we've got it down on the card, we will do some Wink of Stella. So we'll actually assemble the card. Actually, we need to stamp the sentiment and the card inside, and then we will do the Wink of Stella. Okay, so we're going to put this little piece of leaf, the part that goes, the accessory piece, I guess you call it, to the base. And you'll see that it lines up. I should get my little, keep wanting to not get my fingers dirty, and I keep forgetting that I have tweezers. So anyway, if you just line it up at the bottom, and then it just goes against that outer edge, and it fits ever so nicely. If you do it right, it's just all lined up. And I had already done the other two before I started the video. So that's the leaves. And so then what I do usually is with another glue dot, I line up the leaves kind of where I think I'm going to want them and put them down with glue dots before I dimensionalize the flower itself. So I like the two littler, a big and a little, kind of side by side. So basically I'm going to take one and glue it like right there. So get the glue dots out again. And I use to take your pick tool and just put it at the end here. And I just kind of want to line it up with that farther out piece. And I'll get a glue dot for the next one. And kind of the same thing, I just kind of eyeball it. And then the last one I kind of put over on this side. So same thing, another glue dot. Put it at the end. And put it kind of like that. So when you're done, it looks like that. And then I'm going to put dimensionals on the back because I do want the flower actually popped up. And I am always a more is better kind of girl, so you'll see that I may use way more dimensionals than you would think are necessary, but like I said, I'm a more is better kind of girl in most everything in life for me. Okay, so let's go ahead and before we assemble the card and do our stamping. So the card inside looks like that, and basically what I did was I took the Whisper White and this flower out of the Prize Peony bundle, and I used Blushing Bright ink and ink it up, and I stamped off, if I remember correctly, yes, I just stamped off once. So stamp off once and then stamp it in the center, and I kind of hold it down for a second or two. And then we'll take and use the Mary Merlot ink. And we're going to use the sentiment that says, "Your sweet friendship refreshes the soul." And we're going to put that full strength right in the center of the flower. Ooh, so pretty. All right, so put the ink up before I stick my finger all in it. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside for a second. And we will, oh, actually I do want to stamp my sentiment. And there is a little trick I'm going to show you on the sentiment when I stamp it. And that is, we're going to use the "Love and Thanks to a Dear Friend" in Mary Merlot ink. And I'm going to stamp it kind of in the center of this piece of paper. And I will show you what I'm going to do with these Stitch So Sweetly dies. And I used not the smallest, but I believe it was the second from the smallest. Yeah. And I mean, you could make it full on, you know, and have it bigger, but I didn't want it quite as wide as that. I wanted it kind of narrow and thin. And so I'll show you a trick that I learned from, I think it was Kylie Bertucci that I saw a video of it on, but I've seen it a couple of places. But I'm pretty sure she was the one I saw the latest with it. But basically what you're going to want to do is, I took and lined that line up just above the top of the letter so that it was, the stitching is like right above the top of the L and the K, you know, the tallest ones. And so I'm going to line it up and then put it in the Big Shot like that. And I have my Big Shot just off to the side here, so I'm going to run it through off camera. Hopefully it won't shake the table too much. And then we're going to take, so basically what you're going to do is you're going to take it and realign it just below the bottom. And so basically that's going to thin it out and cut this little strip off. So the one thing you want to pay attention to is that you don't cut off any of the words, but also that what I basically did, the easiest way I found was to line up the scallop parts. So if you just take and you line up the scallops on either end and make sure that once you have it lined up, your words are still showing. If you do it, I think it was 6 little scallops down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 6 scallops down. It's just perfect. And so I'm going to lay that down again, run it through a second time. And so now what we should have is that. Isn't that cool? So the cool thing is now you have got exponentially higher number, because you can make these, you don't just have like the 6 that it comes with. I mean, you can make it, you know, infinitely more. So it really opens up, and you can do this with multiple of the sets. And so it's a really cool way to extend the life of your dies and have multiple uses for them. So I thought that was a really cool tip that she gave. So okay, so then I took and I sponged the edges because I just wanted it a little bit aged looking, or not quite so bright. I just kind of like the way the inking looks on the edges of things. I didn't do it too dark. I just lightly run it around the edges, just the all 4 edges. Basically, I'm just kind of coloring the scallops really is basically what winds up happening. You're just kind of darkening them up a little bit and giving them a little oomph, for lack of a better word. And so when I have it as dark as I want it, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, that is that. So now we are pretty much done with the stamping for this card, except for the envelope. And for that, we're going to need the Blushing Bride again. And I just stamped one of those, that same flower, just off the edge of the stamp. I'm going to get some of this stuff kind of out of the way here real quick. And so basically we're going to, there's my envelope. If I can find my envelope. So let me just get all the stamping out of the way so I can put away all the ink pads, and then we will do the final assembly. So just ink up this stamp again. And I just went off the edge of the stamp, off the edge of the envelope with the stamp. That's that. And then we will adhere DSP to the back of that. So now we can put away the ink for this card and we can assemble. So basically I'm going to fold this in half and use my bone folder. There it is, that I had just a second ago, to get a sharp crease. I'm going to burnish that. And then I'm going to cover up that boo-boo. So I'm going to nail on the gray granite layer so that I can put that on the card inside. And like I said, I tend to use a lot of snail just because I don't know if it's the humidity in Texas, but sometimes I have trouble with snails sticking forever. So I put quite a bit on there. And I haven't gotten to use a lot of the seal. I've used it a few times, but I can tell you it's stickier to begin with, and I'm hoping it lasts longer. So I think it's going to be a better alternative. Let me move my stamps out that I have ink on. Okay, so now I think this part is dry, and we can adhere it to the card inside. And then this card will be done, and we can move on to the next one. Okay, now before I put the card front on, I'm going to adhere this red panel to here. And basically I'm going to line it up with that, I'm going to have one full circle and line it up just below there. I'm actually going to do it that way. So we're going to put a little adhesive on here. And like I said, I'm going to line it up. I'm going to line it up. I said I was going to line it up with that one full circle. And if you do that little line right there, that is pretty much a full circle. And I tried to get it to where I'm at the edge here. Get it straight before I put it down. I tend to get things crooked a lot. I look at it up here and I forget to pay attention to down here. And you don't pay attention. That could be why my snail doesn't stick permanently, because you halfway pull it up when you're working with it. So now this is the gray granite shimmer ribbon, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I don't know if the camera is doing it justice, but it's really shiny and shimmery. I can't seem to make it. Oh yeah, you can see it. Oh. Anyway, I took and I used 6 inches of that because we're going to tape it on the back. So I've got some Scotch tape here that I'm going to, and I'm going to put it like right in the middle of this red square. And I'm really going to kind of just eyeball that, what I think is the middle. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to pull it over. And then I'm going to use Scotch tape to put that down. Somehow I need more than 2 hands here. Okay, so that's how I adhere my ribbon. You could also use glue dots; those would work fine. And there, I just use Scotch tape just because it's available and quick. Now the square vellum doily. What I did to put it down, you could use glue dots underneath where the flower is going to be, but I wound up using just a little bit of liquid glue. And basically what I did was, I had a silicone craft mat yesterday, but I don't know where it went today. So we're just going to improvise here. And I'm going to grab a block real quick and put a little glue on a block. And give me 1 second to get So basically I'm just going to take and put just a couple of squirts of, yeah, that's what happens when you leave the bottle sitting. Ooh, there we go, that's a squirt. All right, so you put a little squirt of that on, and then I'm going to use, this is another tip I got from Kylie Bertucci, that you put a little bit of water in it, and it keeps it from being quite so, I think her term was gloopy, which I totally get, because it does get a little sticky, but I've got a Tombow glue, a dedicated Tombow glue Stampin' Dauber, and so I just used a little bit of that. I've got really way more than I need, but it definitely will be more than I need. But anyway, so what I did was, and I sure wish I had that silicone craft mat. I'll tell you what, I'm going to use my, no, I can't use that because I'm going to have to use that again. Grab a piece of cardstock out of my, actually no, I'm going to use this plastic out of my bin. And so I'm just going to dab around all of the edges, and definitely in the center. And I'm going to try to get it in a spot where I haven't glued it yet, so that I don't cross-contaminate it. Let's try folding it over. Yeah, that silicone craft mat would have been a much better idea. But you know how things tend to walk away when you need them? And no matter how organized I get, things hide. I swear. Gremlins. Okay, I think I've hopefully got enough here. I definitely have enough on my fingers. So let's do, and what I did was I lined the 2 of the corners up with the edge of the ribbon. So by doing that, you know you've got it pretty much centered, because if you get these 2, the rest of it kind of has to follow. So let me get my fingers out of the glue. And then I just kind of tapped it down, since I put glue on all of the edges. And if you didn't get it too thick, it will dry fairly clear. but the water actually thins it out, where I found that it didn't show as bad, because with vellum, you know, sometimes glue really shows. And by putting the water on it, where it is going to show is right here, but that's going to be covered by flour, so I think that that's going to be fine. And I have a paper towel right over here that I'm going to wipe my block off so I don't have glue, and I will go wash that with water a little bit later because I don't want it to stay sticky. Okay, so let me get that out of the way so I don't stick it all over everything, and throw this away because it did what I needed it to do. Alrighty, so we've got that down, and so now let's go ahead and adhere it to the card front. And we'll just do that with smile. All right, and so just it's got a 1/4 of an inch, about 1/8 of an inch on each side border. So we'll just lay that down, and then we can take our little dimensionals off. And I've gotten this from several people, so I can't give credit to just one because I don't know where I learned it first, but it does definitely work. You just take and grab and flick, kind of flick your wrist, so to speak, and you just, if you poke it hard enough and get it on kind of on the edge, I've discovered if you get it there, it pulls it right off, and you wind up with them all on this tool at one time, and it gives you the best opportunity to get them all in the trash. They actually in the trash and not like on the dog, because I have found those things all over the house. So they wind up on the bottom of your feet or your shoes, and you vacuum up everywhere. All right, so then I just kind of eyeball where I want it centered. I kind of just try to center it between the square. And then I put dimensionals on the back of the sentiment as well. Yeah. So I really wouldn't have had to do 3, but oh well. Like I said, I'm a more is better kind of girl. All right, so there's that. And then we can put that on the card front, kind of in the center. And then we're going to use some of these pretty little faceted gems, and I just use the, some people use the putty end, but I find that the pokey end, for about, it's my technical term for it, the stick end of it works just as well. And I don't tend to use the putty as much as I do this piercing tool end. So I just put like 3 on there. And then we are going to put some Wink of Stella on, and I usually squeeze it just a little. Try not to squeeze it too much because inevitably it'll give you a big blob of glitter. And so I just, as you can tell, I glitter my hands a lot. And so I started with it in the, actually I'm going to do a little bit more. And I have learned if you fill this back up with alcohol, you can actually reuse it, because usually if you, I don't know if you can, you probably can't see it, but I can tell there's still a lot of glitter in there, but it's actually kind of out of juice. And so I don't know if I have another one in here. I have another one, so for now I will use this other one. Oh yeah, this one's got much more goodie in it. So, but I just lightly did the entire center. Just thought that really made it pop. And then I just kind of went around the edges of the pink part of the flower. Basically everywhere where I sponged, then I went over it with the Wink of Stella. And so all around the edges. And you don't have to be super duper careful with this because sparkle is always a good thing, or at least in my mind. And you don't have to do this if you don't want it to, you know, be sparkly. Just leave it. I mean, it looks really pretty as it is. But I just thought the extra little sparkle really zhuzhed it up a little and made it wow. And so, and then I went all the way around the edges. That's what you get if you squeeze it too hard. Luckily, I did that not on the card. I would have cried. I have done that before, though. Look how pretty that is. That's the prettiest grid paper ever. So now, and this is one that I have actually, because I can smell the alcohol, one I have refilled with alcohol. And so that is a lesson that when you got it really full, be careful, because it does, when you squeeze, it really does come out fast. So, yeah, so kind of be gentle with it. And otherwise you will have a lot of glitter in the one big blob. And it might not be where you want it. So anyway, I think I've got the majority of this. I can't see any spots I missed. You guys may be saying, you missed a spot. Actually, I did miss a spot. This whole top section up here. Okay. I think I got it all. Okay. Well, I'm going to call it good. If I missed any, I can go back and get it, but I don't want this to be a 2-hour video if I can avoid it. All right, so that is card number 1. Pretty much done. We do need to put the DSP. Where did my DSP piece go? Yet again, things have a tendency to walk away. I just had it here. Well, you know what? If I find it, I'll do it. If not, I'm going to move on to the next card. So I'm going to actually pause and clean up a bit and set up the next card, and I'll be right back. Okay, so this next card we're going to make is a thank you card, and this one actually uses both the Peony, Prize Peony stamp set as well as the ornate thanks. That's where the thank you sentiment and the inside sentiments come from. But everything else is the Prize Peony. So what you're going to need for this card is the card base is gray granite, and it's the standard A2 cardstock, 8.5 by 11 US, and it's a half a sheet of that. So this is 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4 1/4. Then you're going to need a piece of Blushing Bride at 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And you're going to need 2 Whisper White panels that are 5 1/4 by 4. And then a piece of the Peony Garden DSP, which is 2 1/4 approximately by 6, and that's an envelope flap. And then I used just a scrap that I had of, this is a 1/2 inch by, well, actually it looks like about 6 inches, but I'm only going to need like 4 1/4, 4. I'm only going to need 4, so 1/2 inch by 4. So we'll just trim down the extra. And then you need a scrap of Whisper White for this flower on the front, and we'll stamp that. And then you need a scrap of Pear Pizzazz, which I've already pre-stamped these and cut them out with the Big Shot because there were several of them. And so I took and I stamped the 2 little leaves from the Prize Peony stamp set in Mossy Meadow ink on Pear Pizzazz, and I've already cut those out with these two dies, and they are actually 2 different sizes. One of these leaves is slightly smaller than the other, and so, but they do coordinate really well with them. So I've already done that. So try to save a little time. Did that off camera. Okay, so we're going to stamp this bigger, well, not the biggest, but the standalone flower in Blushing Bride. And then we are going to, actually, you know what? I stamped 2 of those. You're going to grab another piece of paper. You're going to need two scraps or a larger scrap. But you want to stamp 2 of those now that I think about it. We can shut this up. And so let's go ahead and we can go ahead and color it, and then we'll cut them out with our die. And what I used for this was petal pink, the petal pink, dark and light petal pink Stampin' Blends. And so I'm going to actually start with the darker of the 2. And I usually use the brush tip end. And basically I'm going to go where these areas are a little bit darker and just kind of line. Just kind of, and I did quite a bit of the center just because I feel like usually the center of the flowers are a little bit darker. But then in other areas I just kind of, there's no right or wrong here. I just kind of laid in just a little bit of the darker color wherever I thought it needed it. And you can always go back and add more. But I did make it heavier concentration in the center of the flower. And then where these lines are a little bit thicker. And as you can tell, I'm not doing it the same way twice. So both of the flowers are going to come out a little different, which in nature, flowers are always different. And so pretty much the rest of it, and I didn't even color this 100% solid because I think it's okay to have some white spots on the flower. That provides variety. But where you had the darker, I do try to blend it in a little bit just to kind of not have such harsh lines. And so, but you can tell some of the edges I'm leaving them white, and I'm doing that on purpose because I think it provides just a good contrast. And you do want to try to stay somewhat in the lines. I mean, if you get out, it's not the end of the world, but because it does leave just a slight white border around it when you cut it out, it's better to actually not go all the way to the edge and have it bleed out. So, all right, so we'll call that one done. I'm going to try to go around and blend some of these colors. And I tend to get focused on coloring, so if I quit talking, you guys forgive me because I have a hard time doing 2 things at once sometimes, talking and anything else basically, coloring or writing, typing, whatever. I have tendency of single focused mind, and I'm lucky if I can get it to focus at all. So depending on the day, how much coffee I've had, how much sleep I've had, you know that. And I think it just comes with the territory. All right, I'm actually going to go back and touch the thing up just a little bit because I left just a little more white than I don't like too much white. And I wanted to blend these lines just a little bit more. But you can see there's really no rhyme or reason. And as it dries, it will lighten up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to call that good. And I'm going to go ahead and you use this this die from the Peony dies set, this outline die. So I'm going to go ahead and run these through my Big Shot just real quick, and that's off camera. I'm not going to bring it on camera just because this is a fairly delicate setup of my camera, it's not super sturdy, so if I go bumping anything, the whole world may collapse. So I'm just gonna try to be gentle and use my big shot ever so gently, just slightly off screen. And I'm sorry if I shake the table. It's like I said, it's a kind of a makeshift. My craft room is still in flux, but it's coming along. It's getting better. So I've got one more to cut. So let me do this one more time, and then I will show you the masking portion of this card, the that technique, because this is the card that uses the more of the traditional masking that I've always known and used. And then the next card that we do, the last card, we will do the reverse masking. Okay, so I have cut those two out. So let me put my die up so I don't lose it, because things have a tendency of walking away at on my desk. No matter how organized I try to be, things just disappear. So all right, I can put that in the trash. All right, so now what we're going to do is, before I cut these, let me not lose these little leaves that I have worked so hard to get. I'm going to pile them all up together. Okay, and so let's go ahead and do the card front. I want to show you guys how to do that, and that's the bulk of the work we have left. So let's get that knocked out. And I see I have a little boo-boo here, but it's going to be covered by a flower, so that is really not a big deal. Okay, and I've already, I had done this card once or twice before already. So the first time I did it, I basically took I want to say it's an inch and a half, but it might just be an inch. It was just an inch, a 1-inch strip. Well, it looks like it's about 8.5 inches long, but basically a 1-inch strip and it's just copy paper. And I basically did that just so I didn't have this is actually that painter's tape, and it's not supposed to stick to paper, and it typically doesn't. It did, if you're not careful when you take it off, especially on this not so thick, the Whisper White cardstock, it will tear a little if you're not careful, but if you're careful, it comes off without tearing. And so basically what I'm going to do, and I'm going to line this top part up with this darker line, just so I know, I want it on a straight line just so I know it's even. And so what I'm going to try to do is, because this is 4 inches tall, I want to have like 1.5 inches above and 1.5 inches below, or maybe that's just 1 inch above and 1 inch below, or 1.25 inches. Anyway, math and I are not the best of buds, but basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares down on either side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. And so I'm basically lining the top part up. And basically what I did was that paper is underneath, and there's a little bit, like a 1/2 inch. Yeah, let's do it this way. That's exact. There's a 1/4 inch above the. So basically, I took a 1-inch strip, and then I went 1 square above it, and did my tape all the way across. So it's a 1/4 inch above it, and the tape overlaps in the middle on the paper, but that's okay. Basically, you just want to line your typing paper up across the center, the 1 inch, go 1/8 inch above, and line it up. I went off the edge on purpose so that I could line up the tape on this side and make sure it lines up on that same line on the other side. That way you know it's even. Then I repeated that step on the bottom, and I went 1/8 inch below, or 1 square below the paper on the bottom part, and I lined it up with the same line on the other side. So basically, you know, you have it's in the exact center of this card. And what that does basically is gives you that strip It hides this strip while you're working so that you're masking and you don't get the rest of the flower down here where you don't want it. And that'll make sense in a second. So you also want to take and cut out of the die, this littler die, and the prize and the peony die is the smaller flowered one. And you want to cut it out of a post-it note with as much sticky on the post-it note as you can get. And so I just cut one of those out. And I'll show you what we're going to use that for in just a minute. So basically, the first thing you're going to do is grab this smaller flower with the 2 leaves on it. And I'm using my Stampin' Write markers for this. I've got the Old Olive Stampin' Write marker and the Blushing Bride Stampin' Write marker. And I'm going to use the brush tip end, the bigger end. And I'm going to, I've got some fuzzy on my stamp. But I'm going to start with the lighter color because you don't want to cross-contaminate this by putting the darker on it first and then trying to stay out of it and ask me how I know that. So basically you're just going to find where you want the flower, and these are both flower I discovered after I tried to make it leaf the first time. And you're just going to, everywhere you have the flower, and I take it and I put it on the side of the marker so that I don't damage the tip. And that also makes the coverage go on a whole lot faster than if you were just doing the tip. But you just take and you put ink on the entire flower. And try not to get it on the leaf. And actually, if you get it on the leaf, it's okay because this color is lighter than the ink. So the leaf ink, and so it'll cover it up. Whereas if you did it the other way, it wouldn't work. So, and then I take the green for the 2 little leaves and carefully color the leaves. And then what I'm going to do is what I call huff. You're going to breathe on your stamp, and that remoistens the ink. And then I'm going to get 1 leaf on up here, kind of put it in an angle, and go off the edge of the cardstock on purpose. And you're going to go onto the tape for part of it. So I'm going to hold that down for just a second. But when you lift it up, you've got just part of the ink, and the other part is on the tape, so you do want to be careful and not smear it. But and so then what we're going to do is take this little mask, and you're going to lay it down and cover up where you just stamped, and you're going to re-ink it again the exact same way. And this time you do have to be a little more careful. Well, you could be really good about it and clean it again and do it fresh, but I'm in too big a hurry, so I'm gonna just try to be careful and not touch the green with the pink. But you can see how dangerous that is, because if you're not careful, you'll wind up getting green tips on your pink marker, and that's never good. But anyway, I'm living dangerously and I'm gonna give it a try. All right, and then I'm gonna redo the leaf. And I'm gonna huff. And I'm going to stamp down again. And now the second one, you're going to see that the flower is going to overlap the second one. So it's not a big deal to mask it. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to the other end and repeat the same steps. I'm trying to stay out of this ink down here because it's still wet on the tape and I don't want to smear and get ink everywhere. But just color it up. We're going to wind up doing this just a few more times. And it gives a pretty ending effect on the card, I think, because when you pull the masking tape off is when you really get the wow factor on it. All right, so I'm going to do it kind of at an angle this time. Just get the 1 leaf. Good thing that little boo-boo's going to be covered. It keeps bugging me. I keep keep thinking, oh my gosh, I screwed up, but it's okay. I keep panicking myself. All right, so I'm trying to hurry here because I know that this video is continuing to increase in size. All right, so off again. Oops, and I almost forgot to. You want to, especially with this one, because you're gonna, otherwise, the point of doing this is to keep this leaf from covering up the flower. So by doing it this way, it winds up on the thing, and look, it looks like the flower is behind it, and it didn't like stamp into it and look all bad. It really looks individual, like individual flowers. So it's very, very cool. All right, so we're going to repeat the same 4 things across the bottom. So I'm going to try to hurry and get this done. So get this knocked out. In fact, I'm going to pause it and I'll come back when this is finished. On second thought, I'm not going to pause it because the whole point of this is to teach you. We may fast forward it if we can figure out our editing. Got my tech guy in there trying to learn how to edit. You know, I come up with these bright ideas and then he has to implement them for me. And, you know, and I always give him like 48 hours notice. And so he's actually had a few more days than that, but he's learning how to edit for me. So when I get this done, hopefully he can edit out all my boo-boos. So if there are boo-boos, then it's his fault. So no, he's awesome. I can't fuss. So anyway, I'm trying to hurry through this. And just 2 more and we'll be done. I do try to do a few different angles just so it's not just not the repeated same pattern all the time. You know, it's just a little bit different patterns. Because in real life, flowers always look a little different. And so you're gonna put your mask down, and the sticky part holds it in place. And I'm gonna do it like that. Okay. And then this middle part I'm not going to do because the bigger flower is going to be there. So now I'm going to let that dry for just a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these other 2 flowers because I don't want to touch that and smear anything. So basically what I did for these 2 flowers was I took where that first big dent is and I just cut straight across. And so that part of the flower I kept, this part I threw away. And repeat that on the other one. Oh, I'm having a heck of a time picking stuff up tonight. Okay, and so same thing, cut it right there. And now we can pick these little pieces up and toss them out. Or if you wanted to, I guess you could use them for something else, but I'm not going to. All right, and so then I'm going to put dimensionals on the backs of these because I do want these popped up. And I'm really just going to use 3 on both of them. And I'm going to use glue dots to put the leaves, man, I'm having a heck of a time, to put the leaves on the back before I put them down. That makes it a little bit easier. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and try to pull this off. And so here's the moment of truth. So if you just kind of pull it Panic, but that's from yesterday. Okay, so see, when you pull it, it's just as white as it can be right there. Voila. Now you could leave it like this if you wanted to, and you just wanted to put the sentiment in the middle and not put a border. I just felt like it was too like cut off, and so I didn't have a real thin flat ribbon that I liked, that I thought coordinated with this well, and I had seen a similar technique on YouTube, some video, and I don't even remember who the person was, or even if it was Stampin' Up, but I don't believe it was our tear and tape. I think they were using that red line tape, which would be smoother. But I'm going to use, I used tear and tape for this, and that's why you have this little kind of bubbly looking, the bubbly look, but it actually looks okay. And so I'm going to use it again just because that's what I have. And so basically what I did for this was find at the end, and I just lined it up. I did go off the edge, and I basically lined it up where the tape had, trying to get it where the tape had been prior. And really, actually, now that I think about it, if we line this paper up, that ought to put it at a you have grid paper for a reason, Laura, use it. So I'm going to line it up. Stuff is sticky. So basically you line it up with that line right there. And the good thing about tear and tape is it's easy to tear. I'm going to tear it off. And before I cut that off, I'm going to do the other part. And so same thing with the bottom one. Line it up with that line. And I obviously don't have that. Either don't have that straight or didn't stamp it straight, because that, if I put it 100% straight, that is going to leave a lot of a gap right there, which I don't want. So I'm going to make it just a little crooked on purpose. So, all right, now what I'm going to do is pull it up. I'm trying not to rip the world, because tear and tape is not painter's tape. It actually is sticky and will rip. So, if you're careful, you can typically get it up without ripping too bad. See what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to just snip it. Just put it down. All right, so then what I did, I'm going to leave that one there. That's now decoration. But I'm basically just trimming it off at the edge of the cardstock, and you could flip it over to the back if you wanted. But I just trimmed those right to the edge of the cardstock. Try to get it straight. And then those become trash. But the point of this is that when you pull them off, and I'll use a take your pick tool to pull them off. So I've learned that if you want to get it off easy, you rub it, and then you just get the edge of your pick, take your pick tool under it, and it should peel right off. Same thing with this. All right, and so then I'm going to grab a piece of actually, I'm going to get a whole piece of paper, and I'm going to get my silver embossing powder, and I'm going to sprinkle all over that tear and tape with embossing. And I should have used my embossing buddy. That's a retired item that I keep hoping Stampin' Up! Will bring back, but I forgot to use it. So, and I should have definitely used it. So what I am going to do, because I've made a big old mess, I always keep a little paintbrush for this very reason, because you do want to clean this out because you're going to be stamping in this section and you don't want it to be splotchy. Goodness, I should have used my embossing buddy. This is what happens when you don't use one. You get it everywhere. Try to knock some of it off, but when you get close to the edge, you want to be careful because you will undo your straight line if you're not careful. And a stray piece would be better than a hole in your line. Okay, I think that's probably good enough. So, all right, so now I'm going to pour all this extra back in my little pot before I get it everywhere, because that's the one bad thing about embossing powder is it makes a mess. I love it. It's beautiful, and it's just still, after all these years of doing it, I still am wowed by it because it's just so cool when it turns shiny. I still think it's just the most awesome stuff. I just love it. And do it all the time. My club girls know that I like my embossing, but it does make a big old mess. So it's not the neatest of things to use, and so I'm going to apologize because I'm going to use my heat tool and hope that it doesn't drown you out. You just want to heat it until it melts the embossing powder. Luckily, it works pretty fast, and it does kind of bubble up, and that's because it's the tear and tape, and it's kind of melting that as well. But it still dries. Um, so it's not, you won't ruin it. It's you can touch it once it's done. But it does give that kind of bubbled effect, and it's because the tear and tape is not really a smooth tape anyway. And as you melt it, it just bubbles it up. So I wasn't sure in the beginning I liked it, but if you melt it a little further, it kind of does start to melt together better. It's not quite so holy, but that does kind of have a really kind of cool effect, even when you leave it a little. If I hadn't heated it quite so much, it actually was kind of pretty there too. So, okay, so now we are going to, and I just blew my leaves. Hopefully I didn't blow them all off the table. I blew one away, but oh well, we're going to go with what we have left. This is where the putty tool comes in handy. I'm having a hard time picking stuff up tonight. And I at one point had 6 leaves, but I only see 5. You guys probably watched one blow right off the table, but okay, well, we're not going to worry about it. So now what I'm going to do is take my glue dots and put them actually no, I'm changing my mind. I'm going to lay them down first and then slide them in with a glue dot on the tip of it. I think I can make that work. We're going to try one. We're just going to do the top one first. Ooh. I'm actually going to... All right, so there's that. And then we're going to take... I'm going to twist out a little bit more of my putty because I don't have any on there. And I'm going to grab a glue dot. And usually what I do with my glue dots is I just lay it down, mash, and it pops right off. And I put it on the top because I'm going to slide it underneath here. Try to get it out of the way of the glue dot, the dimensional that I put down. And I'm going to lay it kind of off to the side because I don't want it to go off the top of the card too far because this is the top of your actual card. All right, so we'll do that with another one on the other side. and slide it in, down. And then I'm going to take a smaller one and I'm going to repeat and put it down. Well, in theory, this was going to work really well, but it might have been better to put it down before, or put it on before we put it down. We'll try that with this other one. We'll do it both ways. Yeah, I need to trim a little bit more off of this one because I didn't trim it in the right spot. So I'm going to cut just a tad more off. Luckily, I didn't hit a dimensional. All right, yeah, that's better. Okay, so let's kind of see. I'm just going to go ahead and stick it down like I did a while ago. We'll make it work. All right, so go ahead and I basically just lined it up with the edge of that silver. And then I'm going to use the glue dot. And on this side, because I put 2 over here, I'm kind of trying to even it out. So I put 2 on this side. Aye. Oh, you know what? I'm only going to put 1 because I blew 1 away. So we're just going to make 1 work, and we're going to put 1 over here. If I find the other one later, I'll put it over here. Anyway, that looks okay. Now, one thing I forgot to do that I did want to do, and that was it's getting late and I'm having brain fog. So I'm going to use my blends on the flowers, and I should have actually done that before I put this flower on, but like I said, it's getting late and I forgot. So we're just going to go with, this is the light Old Olive, and I'm just going to color the leaves. And I do kind of color those all in. And luckily, by covering up the flower, there's not so much to color. Okay, so that was all the green leaves. And then I need my petal pink blends, and I'm going to start with the dark and kind of do the, and I didn't even do all of this. I just kind of around the edges, not even all the flower was colored. Some of it I left white. And then I go back in with the darker one. And I do kind of try to blend where I put the dark with the light, but I'm leaving some white, just kind of like I did before, because I think it is how they look in nature. Different variegated looks. And I did get that a little dark, but I'm going to go ahead and go with it. Okay. Oh, I forgot the top half. It does need a little color, but I'm going to kind of be loosey-goosey with it. I do want to do a little bit right there. Okay. Yeah, like I said, it would have been more optimal to have colored before I put the flowers down, but I'm just not thinking too clearly right now, so we're going to go with it like that. Okay, so that is the front, and now we need to stamp the thank you sentiment. from the Ornate Thanks, and that is just, it's all sentiments, and it's just got 2 or 3 big ones and a lot of little ones that go with it that have really cool cursive writing and are very, very pretty. And so for the front, we're going to use the bold thank you, and I'm using basic gray for that. And so I'm going to stamp, try to get it pretty dark because it's actually darker than it looks. I inked it up really well last night, and I thought, there is no ink on here. And so after I stamped it, I realized, yeah, there was ink there. So, and I'm eyeballing this. Normally, this kind of thing I would use the Stamparatus on, but I'm using the Stamparatus for the inside, card inside, and I just didn't take the time to make another panel for the card front. So that turned out pretty good, and it's a nice solid look. So I'll put this aside to clean in a little bit. All right, and so before we put that down, I'm gonna let it dry, and we're gonna do the sentiment for the card inside. And this is where I am going to use my Stamparatus. And so for the card inside, we need the inside panel. And normally I mark where I want this to be, but I did not do that. So I'm going to, yet again, just eyeball it. I think I want it down a little bit. Yep, that's where I want it. All right, so now I'm going to put my King Kong magnets on. These suckers will pinch a finger in a heartbeat. So you want to be real careful with them. And normally I would try to use a Stampin' Spot on the Stamparatus because these bigger ink pads tend to make a bigger mess, and the little Stampin' Spots are perfect for the Stamparatus. But I did not grab one before I started, and I'm just going to wing it and try to clean off before I stamp down, clean off the plate where I think I got extra. And the cool thing, I think, if you haven't seen this Stamparatus before, the cool thing is it's got this foam plate behind it that allows it, for photopolymer, you want to use that because they're a little bit, they don't have as much give because they don't have the foam behind them. But if for whatever reason they don't stamp 100% correctly the first time, you can re-ink it and stamp it in exactly the same spot, because you know with the magnets down it's going to stay right where it is supposed to. But that turned out perfect, so I don't have to stamp it again. I don't know if you can read that, but it just says, just wanted to say you made my day. And so I'm going to take that out of the Stamparatus. We're pretty much done with it. So move it off to the side. And then we stamped, I'm going to shut that stamp pad up so I don't mess my fingers up. And then we are going to take this same little stamp that's been getting a lot of work out on this card, and we're going to do the petal pink and the old olive again for the card inside. And the 2 little leaves. Puff. And stamp. And here's where I use the Wink of Stella, if I've got the right one, since I've got the 2. And I started with the leaf, and you'll see that it draws the color down from, if you catch it before it's completely dry, it will actually kind of act almost like a watercolor pen. It pulls in some of the color and kind of works it in. It works better on the green than it does on the pink. I don't know if it's because the pink's so light or because the pink dries really fast, but anyway, and it adds ever so much sparkle, and it just looks gorgeous. Oh yeah, you can see it. Yeah, isn't that pretty? Okay, so Let that dry for just a second. So what we're going to do now is we can go ahead and I should have saved that part to last, but anyway, it won't squish it too bad. I'm going to find my snail tool. And we can put the card front on. And just kind of, oopsie. Get that the right size. That doesn't look quite right, does it? We did not. These are not 5 1/4 by 4, evidently. Yeah, they are too. This is yeah, 8 1/2. Ah, this is 5 3/4. Okay, I was like, something's off. So, yeah, you know that measure twice, cut once rule. Well, as you can tell, I obviously didn't heed that. So, and this is my old paper trimmer, but I'm going to use it because it's plugged in here. My other one's in another room. So this will most likely work much better. All right, so let's try this again. All right, now, yeah, that looks better. What is going on? Okay. Yeah, Murphy crafts with me a lot. So, all right, and then we can do the inside panel, which is the 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. I hope I told you guys that when we started, but all of this will be typed up and sent out or posted on my blog. All right, I'll make sure I have that right side up, because I have done that before. Put it on the wrong side and totally wonk a card. All right, so there's that. And now we can put this on. There is that. And so now all we have left to do, besides the envelope, that this time it's the envelope I can't find. Last time it was the flap, this time it's the envelope. I have to wonder if I didn't get the two crosswise. Anyway, all right, so this other little strip, I'm going to put it, I'll put it right inside. And on the reason that one's coming up a little is because I originally put it all the way up and lined it up with the pink and had no white above it, and then I decided, no, I want a little bit of white. Then after I put it down, I thought, I think I liked it better up there. So this time I am going to put it up there, just because then I'll have one of each and I can decide by looking at them face to face and side by side which one I like the most. So I'm actually going to trim it. No, I'm going to trim it after I do it. So I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of this snail. All right, and so I am going to put it all the way up to the top where the white starts. And then what I'm going to do is take it and snip it where the white is. Yeah, this would have been easier to do before yeah. Don't do as I do. Trim it before you put it on. In theory, it made sense, but in practicality, it doesn't work. So, or it's not as easy to work. Anyway, so there's that. And now all we have left to do is put the bling on the front. And so we're going to put, there's that road Tombow glue. I knew better than to leave that out. I should put that up because that thing makes a mess. All right, so we're going to use 2 of the bigger pink faceted gems. And I just put 1 on each side of the sentiment. And I just eyeballed it. So there is that. All right. And I swear I thought I stamped. Okay. Well, yet again, there's another something gone rogue. The envelope has disappeared. So, and once you get it kind of where you want it lined up, actually, I don't know, you probably can't see this, but I can actually kind of see where it is. I'm trying to center this on my card, grid paper, just kind of so I can, I'm not real good at using what I call math and geography, but I can eyeball it here because I can see the panels, and it's actually, I want it just a little bit higher, but I do have it centered, oriented where I want it, right to left. So, but if you don't get it straight, then I don't know if you can really tell really closely on the first one that I did, but my oval was just a little crooked. As my husband likes to tease me, I usually say cockeyed, but that must be a Texas term. But anyway, so I'm putting that down, and you want something fairly thin so that, not like really cardstock, so that when you stamp, you don't have a gap between your stamping and you don't want a whole lot of white space. And the thicker the paper, the more that you potentially could have a gap there of white. So the first thing we're going to do is stamp the largest flower from the Price Peony stamp set in gray granite ink. And I will stamp that up and stamp it, and I find that turning it upside down and inking it works the best. Sorry if I'm banging on the table. And actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to put this aside before I put it down because I really want to sponge the pink on first, and then stamp on top of it. And for that, I'm using actually Blushing Bride. So we're going to do that first. I'm getting kind of ahead of myself, but I just take a sponge and cut it in quarters, and then put the coordinating color that I want. I have one for every color, and I just put that on there and staple it in so that I have a little handle. It works out very well, and so that way I don't cross-contaminate things. And I just basically start a little bit off the paper, and I'm going to sponge kind of in a circle and just get it evenly coated all the way around this oval, just as light or dark as you want it. And I'm going to do the whole thing. When it's done, it kind of looks like Blushing Bride cardstock in the middle. But it'll be really cool when we pick it up because the rest of the card is going to stay white. And so you just keep going in a circular motion, trying not to get any really blobby spots. Just kind of trying to keep it kind of circular motion and smooth. And when you have it as dark as you think you want it, and it's pretty solid, and you don't have a lot of darker spots, you can stop. So I think I'm going to call that good. There is one kind of slightly darker spot. It kind of shows it more on camera, but the flower is actually going to cover some of that. So yeah, set up the ink pad so I don't. Yes, I'm sorry. I realize that there's a glare here, so I may wind up pausing this video and getting a different light setting. This is my very first time stamping in my actual craft room. Club girls will be glad to know that it's a work in progress. I'm in the process of changing rooms, and so this one is actually where I can film in here, and it's kind of a first for me. So my lighting is not quite exactly as I need it, but I'll continue to work on that. So anyway, we're going to take this off now. No, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. I caught myself before I had to start over. So I'm ahead of myself, trying to not keep this video to be too long, and I'm going to be they have to do retakes anyways. Anyway, so I've already done that. So this one may be a real rough cut, but in fact, it may not ever get live. I may have to edit it and do it again. So now that we have inked that a while ago, you remember, I'm going to huff on it to re-moisten the ink. And it's okay. I'm trying to get my head where I can see. I'm kind of putting it towards the top, but not all the way to the top. And the flower actually is going to go off on at least the two sides and the bottom, because there's no way the whole thing will fit in that oval. And it's okay. It looks really good that way. And that's actually what makes the reverse masking technique work, because you can tell that wherever your mask is, you don't get ink there. And so normally you cover up and you want the ink elsewhere. Here you want the ink in the middle where the mask is not, so that's why it's called reverse masking. So you're masking everything you don't want ink on, and where your mask is not, that's where it goes. And that I re-inked my gray granite, so it came out a lot darker this time. As you can tell, it's way, way darker. So what I really should have done is stamped it off once. So lesson learned, if your stamp pad is very juicy, stamp it off once on some scrap paper before you put it down, because otherwise it comes out a whole lot darker. But that's okay. And so we can go ahead now and actually pull this off. Isn't that cool? That is the reverse masking technique. So, and I think I am done with this thing, so I'm just going to set it off to the side, just in case I'm not. And so now, when I got done with this, I thought, you know what, that is just way too much white, and it was really kind of bright and looked a little lost on the page. And so basically I just kind of wanted to dirty it up a little. So what this around the edges are is there is a cute little diamond kind of a design pattern in that prize peony stamp set, and it kind of goes really well with this designer series paper that we're using, that design in it. And so what I did was use the gray granite ink, and this time I'm going to remember to stamp off yeah, at least probably twice, 1, 2, and then 1. And actually I'm going to stamp a couple of times before I re-ink again. And so I basically just went not into the and actually, now that I think about it, what I did the first time was I covered up. I used the piece that I cut out of my mask, and I covered up, so I didn't, that's how I kept from getting ink where I didn't want it. And that is technically the masking technique. So really kind of on this card, we're doing both techniques. And really what I would do normally is tape it down with some more of that repositionable tape. But since I'm in the middle of the cord, I don't want to pause again. I'm just going to keep on going. Oh, hello. It works better to stamp off if you actually put your stamp in ink. I'm sure everybody's laughing at me as I bumble my way through this very first YouTube live. I'm doing so many firsts since we've had this COVID going on, because normally I have been a person-to-person class in my home, and I've had a lot of ladies that are local that like to come to these classes. But due to COVID, I'm not doing home classes at the moment, as most demonstrators having to do it other ways. So um, but we'll make it work. So anyway, and it's still a little bit darker than I had it the first time, and but that's okay. So I think this will be all right. So what we're going to do now is put this stamp aside, and I'll clean these in just a minute. But I'm going to take a gray granite sponge and just lightly dab and definitely rub it off on scratch paper before you start, because since my pad is a whole lot juicier than it was the first time, I'm going to make sure I don't overdo it. And so basically I'm going to do it a little darker and stronger in the corners. The four corners I want it kind of dark, and then I'm just going around the edge, and so you'll kind of see a dark line where the edge is, but it's just ever so slight on the rest of it. And so it's not super dark anywhere but the corners, and even the corners aren't super dark. I'm trying to keep those fairly light, but it really just kind of ages it. It keeps it from being such a stark white that it's just kind of blinding. Because I didn't want it to be overwhelming. I want it to look aged, because the DSP is really pretty, but it's kind of a subtle, soft look, and I just didn't want a really dark. I'm going to turn this around so that I'm not doing it behind my hand so you can't see what I'm doing. But anyway, I didn't want it to be quite so stark. I wanted it to be kind of muted, kind of like the DSP is, because the DSP is just beautiful, but it's a little bit muted tones. And honestly, the DSP is really petal pink and gray granite and basic gray. But I really liked the shade of the Blushing Bride instead of the petal pink. It's a little bit pinkier pink than a skin tone pink. The petal pink is more of a skin tone pink, and I just kind of liked it a little pinkier with the flower, and I'm sure that's a proper term, pinkier. But anyway, there's that, and like I said, even with this, I can tell that my juicy ink pad is making a big difference. It's darker all the way around, but it's okay, not too bad. Okay, so that is the front of that. Pretty much done stamp wise, so we're ready to start assembling. And on the card inside, I kept it fairly simple. I need to grab the other two stamps that I used. So I used a sentiment out of the Price Peony stamp set. The one that says "My thoughts are with you." And so you could use this. Well, this one actually I did as a sympathy card, and unfortunately I have needed several recently. So it's always good to have a stash of these, because when you need them unexpectedly, typically. And so before I put the card together, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my card inside. And I could use Stamparatus with this, but I'm going to be using that on another one. And so I'm just going to eyeball this one and hope I don't have things cockeyed when it's done. So we'll see how I do. I haven't had any inspiration juice girl, so I'll probably be okay. Club girls know what inspiration juice is all about. Okay, so here's the sentiment for the card inside, and I just kind of centered it a little north of center, just a little above center. And then I put a flower in the lower left corner. And what I wound up doing for this flower is using my stamp art markers, because I wanted to use a two-tone shape stamp. And so I don't know if you are part of my classes before, you've probably seen this, but just in case you haven't, basically what I do for that is I take the thicker brush end of the marker, and I just lay it on its side to keep from damaging the tip. And you just run along the stamp with the color that you want. And I start with the lighter color. And you can tell I did not clean this stamp the last time I used it. Shame on me. But so I just run through with the lighter color first, because you don't want to contaminate your lighter marker by putting your darker color on first. Which, even though this ink was dried, it potentially could have damaged that. I got lucky. But bad about if I'm in a hurry, forgetting to clean my stamp right then and there. And I have my little stamping mist here, and I have a Simply Chamois, which I love that thing. If you guys have not used that thing is amazing, wonderful. But so basically, you ink up the flower with the and this is the Blushing Bride, and I use, I think this is Old Olive. Yes, Old Olive. And so I just breathe on it, cup on it, and in the lower left corner, I put this flower. And on this one, I let it dry for a few seconds. My grid paper's coming up. I let it dry for just a few seconds, and I wound up using Wink of Stella on the inside of this because I wanted it to be a little shiny. And if you catch it while it's still wet, the Wink of Stella will actually almost like a blender pen and blend your ink. Now I will say it didn't blend the pink quite as much as it did the green, and I'll show you in a second. But it does add a little sparkle to it, and it's just really pretty. It's very subtle, but it's put some shine on it. But you'll see it on the green that it actually kind of does start to pull some of that color in. So the darker colors, you can tell more that it actually is pulling in some of those colors. So there's that. And actually my Wink of Stella, I need to squeeze it a little because it's not. I do that on my hand, and so I go around glittering myself all the time. But the middle of that was not as shiny as I wanted. So now you can see it. You guys can see it better than I can. Now I'm going to have to fix my lighting. It's going to be an issue for me. But okay, so there's that. And so now we really are ready to assemble. Let me get my ink pad closed for us. Stick my fingers all in it. Because you're not really stamping if you don't have inky fingers, right? Okay. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and assemble the part inside. So I'm going to, I'm going to use snail. I'm trying to use up my snail. It retired in the last catalog, but I had a bunch of refills, and I'm trying to utilize them and use them up. I have tried the Stampin' Seal and the Stampin' Seal press, and I like it much, much better. But if I don't use this Stampin' Snail up, if I don't use it, I won't use it up. I'll quit using it, and so I'm trying to force myself to use it up before I switch over permanently. If you fold your card base, I had already pre-scored that, so I'm folding it and looking for my bone folder. No matter how organized you think you are, you never have everything you need in front of you, right? I'm doing a video. Okay, so with the bone folder, burnish it, I should say. All right, and so now we can put that gray granite on the card inside. And I do like just a really small border typically on the card inside. And then we can adhere the sentiment down. Yay, one down and a few more left. And of course it would go out right in the middle of the video, huh? Wait, I'm in my craft room and I'm very close to a window. So, yeah. Oh, that's not right. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. This is probably going to be figured out. Assuming I can figure out the editing, or actually my wingman is in there and just train on how to do editing for me. My tech man. And so hopefully he will have it all figured out and we will edit that little faux pas right out of the video. Otherwise, you guys will see me change the tape. That won't be the end of the world either. All right, credit inside is done with that one. And now we'll flip it forward. And I'm going to adhere this onto the DSP before I put the card front on because I want to put the ribbon in before I put the card front on. And that ribbon, I'll show you in just a second, it's absolutely gorgeous. And I use a lot of snail because I have a hard time with snail staying down. I don't know if it's the humidity in Texas or what, but if you don't use a lot of snail, and sometimes even with a lot of snail, after a little while the cards come up. Because I tend to be bad about making them and then not sending them out. So I'm trying to get better about that. But so on this, I used about 6 inches of the gray granite, and I'm going to trim it off with my actual ribbon scissors. And basically, I just lined it up. And before I put it down, I'm going to check the sentiment. And I'll show you how I put the sentiment together. And I haven't done that yet, but for now, we're just going to do it like this. Because it's really not so much the width as the height that I want to test. Because you don't want it too far down from the bottom. So, and I tried to center the ribbon. So basically I want the sentiment right about there. And I tried to center the ribbon so that the two, where these points are, okay, if I'm straighten everything out, you know what, I'm going to put the sentiment together first because I think that will actually help me straighten so I don't wind up with something all cattywampus and cockeyed. Another my hubby's favorite of my terms. So and I just adhered this onto the back with snail, but you could also use glue dots. Glue dots are also a favorite of mine to use, and that would work really well on this. As you can tell, this was just a piece of scrap paper that I had before, and it was actually a sentiment for this particular card. This is one we're not doing, but this was the other version of this card that I did, and basically on that one I sponged, or this is actually sponged around the outside and stamped the inside, and then I used the pink here for the sentiment instead, but I decided I liked this other one better, and so we went with that one instead. But so that's another variation that you could do on this. But anyway, so I cut the back in half and just offset it ever so slightly. And you'll notice if you get it too far that the edges here kind of show a little bit as this thing starts to curve. If you get it too far out, you have it show, but I'll show you how I fix that because I did want it to be a little further out. It had a little bit of a break, so I just basically took it and slightly narrowed it down so you can't really tell. It just looks level when you look at it. And so I just trimmed it kind of flat there, and the same thing on the bottom one. Just make sure it's kind of level and even on both ends. Okay, and so then I'm going to put some dimensionals on the back, and so that it's popped up a little bit out of the ribbon. Okay,
So now let's try this again. I'm going to try to center this. See it, but center it where I can see it also. All right, so let's lay this down, and I want it there. And so wanting it right there tells me that I want the okay. I'll hold that side down and then okay. Right, now that I have it about where I want it, now I'm going to try to level it up with the DSP, assuming I have this even. Yeah, that's pretty even. So now I can pull it down to that line right there. Now let's just, for grins and giggles, put this back on. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so what I do is I basically hold it and grab one side and I flip it over. And that's what I'm trying not to let it go. All right, so I'm going to adhere this with Scotch tape. You could also use glue dots, but I have been, well, I have been using Scotch tape, but now on video, of course I can't find it, so, oh, I did see it. I'm trying to get organized, and no matter how hard I try, that just does not seem to be my forte. So, anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape down one side. I'm going to flip it back over and make sure we get it level. All the way down at the bottom. Then I'm lining up with that line right there. Okay. And flip the other one over and do another piece of tape. That down. And now you can use your snail. And we're just going to put that on the card front. Got it fairly even. That's often hard for me when I try to eyeball it from a distance because I'm at a kind of a strange angle here with my setup. I'm going to have to keep playing with this setup and potentially figure out a better way to do it. But we'll see how this goes. It's my first one, so we'll see. Okay, so then we're going to put down the dimensionals. So the card front, and there's the card inside. So all we have left is a little bit of bling and then the envelope, and we're done with card one. All right, so here is the bling, and this stuff is really beautiful. They're the elegant faceted gems that are part of the Peony suite. And on this one, I believe I used them. I think these are petal pink, but they coordinate really well. So I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool. And I've got 2 or 3 of those, but I can only ever find the one with the brush tip for the dye machine. So that's the one I'm going with. And so basically, you just randomly put these wherever you want. So I just going to put them, scatter. I did 3 big ones around the card. Down here. And then I did 2 little ones just on the sentiment. Kind of here. Oops. The good thing about these is if you don't squish them down too hard, you can move them. Right there. And if you didn't want them on the sentiment, you could just leave them off. Okay, so there's the card. done. And then we will do the envelope real quick. And club girls know I do not like to send out naked envelopes. That's actually something I learned from a fellow demonstrator, Mary Deckridge. She was the one who taught me no naked envelopes, and I totally agree with her. After I saw how she did them, I haven't made one since without it. So anyway, we do the envelope flap, and I'm stamping this flower again in the lower corner, and just re-ink it again with the blushing dried ink and the petal, the old olive on the petals. Give me just a second to slap that on. Hopefully, oops, sorry, it's not on camera. As I was saying earlier, this is all new territory for me because I have been an in-person class person, and I had that pretty well down. I have been doing those for I don't know, almost 3 years, and those started out stressful for me, and then over time I've gotten a lot better at those and pretty comfortable with them. There's, had a group of ladies that I craft with on a regular basis, and it was a lot of fun for all of us. And now, thanks to COVID, I'm having to venture out into unknown territory and get comfortable with technology, which, even though I work in the IT field, I do not do video editing and that sort of thing. So this is all new for me. And back in March, I did my first Facebook Live, and that was, I went okay, but that was very stressful. And so now I've been doing Zoom for a while, and I've done a couple of clubs with Zoom, but that was to just a very small group of ladies. And so this one I'm going to open up to the public, I think. And so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, so learning all kinds of new stuff these days, and that's how you grow and mature, and you find what works and what doesn't. And the online crafting community is a wonderful community and a lot of support. So hopefully everybody's kind, because this is a learning curve for me, and you guys are kind of all my guinea pigs in it. But we crafty crew all kind of have similar interests and love for our fellow demonstrators and fellow crafters, and we're a very forgiving bunch, or at least that's what I have found so far. So anyway, so I'm trying to get my ink going without making a big mess, because glue and I have a love-hate with glue relationship. I love it, it sticks great, but half the time it sticks to me, so it makes you have very sticky fingers. So anyway, and this is longer than it needs to be, but I always make it a little longer than I need it. And actually, this may be longer than 6 inches. I just took the last scrap that I had. I think it is actually longer than 6 inches, but 6 inches is always longer. And this is actually a contraband envelope. I'm trying to use up some of my stash. Because I'm cleaning my craft room, lo and behold, guess what? I found a whole bunch of stuff I had forgotten I had stuffed in a drawer. And so I'm trying to utilize things and use them up, and not be such a hoarder of my supplies. I've gotten pretty good at using my DSP, but I had forgotten I had these envelopes, and so I'm trying to just use them up. Anyway, you just basically, the sides you want, you glue the other side down, trim off the excess, stamp the front of your envelope, and I'm not going to color that with Estella just for the video sake, but I did on this other one, and I probably will before I send it out. I think I did on this one. Actually, no, I did not. And actually, on this one, I realized I used gray granite on the leaves, but hey, a little variety. And I'm actually even looking at the wrong one. So. But all right, so there you go. There's card number 1 done. So there's the original with the lighter ink, and here's the other one with the gray granite ink. And actually, now that I look at it, I kind of actually like that one better. So go figure. But what about you guys? So hopefully you can follow along, and now you know how to do the reverse masking technique. So hold on and let me clean up and we will move on to card 2.